You may know Steve Hartman from the CBS Evening News. He's known for those stories that help restore your faith in humanity. But 7 years ago, he quietly started a very different project documenting the bedrooms of children who were killed in school shootings. Rooms that many families have never been able to change. That project became a short film named All the Empty Rooms, and it's now been nominated for an Academy Award. We are so glad to be joined now by Steve Hartman from upstate New York. Again, thanks so much for being here, Steve. We appreciate your importance on this very important topic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So let's start with when and how you realized that this project needed to be a film. When did that come to you?
Well, it was after one of the school shootings, and I just noticed that we seemed to be growing numb to the school shooting tragedy. I know I was forgetting the different ones and certainly forgetting the victims, and I got a little frustrated with myself and frustrated with the country, and started wondering, are we just always going to be like this, or is there something that we could do to sort of shake us out of the numbness? And that's when I thought of the bedrooms that these kids leave behind. And I thought maybe if all of America could stand in one of those bedrooms like the parents have to after a school shooting, maybe that might help restore some of our empathy.
Yeah, and the film does a great job of kind of putting the viewer into that situation, seeing some of those rooms that haven't been touched in years. Sometimes the bed is still unmade, lights are still on. What does it feel like to stand in one of those rooms?
It's quite chilling because, like you say, it's as if it's like the day they walked out, expecting to return. The cap on the toothpaste tube is never put back because that child thought they'd be back. Just one of many tasks that, you put off to another time. But, in these rooms, those tasks just never get done. Dirty clothes in the hamper. A lot of the parents, it would be painful to have to go in and pack up that room, so they leave them just as they were in many cases. And that's kind of why I wanted people to be able to stand in those spaces, because there's really no better way to feel the burden and the weight of the school shooting tragedies than to stand in that space.
What is it about that space, that empty bedroom, that says what words cannot?
I feel like, when you look around the rooms and, everything that a kid holds dear is in their room. Every art project, mementos from every trip they've taken, every card that meant something to them. And, you look around those rooms and, you see many of the things that that even your own kids, have. So you start to see your own child in the rooms. And I think it does a lot more than what we normally do when we're covering, these stories. We show a picture of the kid and, you can look at that and say, oh, that's somebody else's kid. This will never happen to me. But I feel like if you look at the rooms and stand in the rooms, it becomes more your child.
Yeah. We mentioned this film, All the Empty Rooms, has now been Oscar nominated. What does that mean to you? And more importantly, what do you think that means to the families that you spoke to?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. It amplifies the film in a way that, it shines a light on it, brings more people in to be able to see it. It amplifies the message, so that means a lot to me and to the filmmaker. But to the parents, it's much more simple. It just means more people will get to know their child, and their child will not be forgotten. And hopefully that there can be some purpose to come out of the loss. I'd say by and large, every family that participated in this film, that's what they wanted: people to remember their child, and there wanted to be some purpose. So being Oscar nominated, I think, helps both those causes.
Yeah. Now, you still do those feel-good stories every Friday. After 7 years inside this project, though, how do you do both at the same time?
It was hard because I did this project in secret. I never told my bosses at CBS I was working on this. It's one of those, better to ask forgiveness than permission kind of things. So I was doing this project on the weekends and, after my day job. So, it was I'm not going to have to do that anymore. I'll go back to just sort of like you said, restoring people's faith in humanity. Just do that part of my job. But um, both projects, I guess, they seem so radically different, but there is hope in pretty much. I'm not going to do a story or a project if there's not some hope there. And I guess it's a different kind of hope. The on the road segment is more about just, people are good, this country's not lost. But there's hope in this bedroom project too, and that, maybe, we don't have to be a country of school shootings. Maybe, if we can unite behind a common empathy, we can solve this problem too.
You kind of mentioned the reason that you did this project was to kind of change the way we cover these type of stories as journalists. Now that you've completed this project, has that changed your perspective at all on the state of journalism and how we do things today?
I think we're doing a much better job of not mentioning the shooter. Maybe on day one we say who it was, but then, the shooter is not the story. The victims are the story. The one change I would like to see is I wish CBS would have a policy where we don't, try to interview parents who just lost a child in a school shooting immediately after the shooting. I wish, I a lot of the parents talk about how some journalists will knock on the door and try to get an interview if they just lost their child, or sent gift baskets or whatever journalists do. I just, that's one thing I would definitely like to change, because I have a lot more empathy now for the parents and what they have to go through. So.
Certainly. All the Empty Rooms is available now on Netflix. Steve, we thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this today.
Thank you so much for having me.